I know people won't believe me. They have managed to avoid being controlled by humanity, and their magic far exceeds what we have in technology. I was walking home after a party in the city. I remember opening the restaurant door, feeling the cool air on my face, and I walked with a belly full of pasta and wine, with pleasant memories filling my mind. It was my friend Tracy's birthday party at Mario's, our all-time favorite Italian restaurant. And the 8 of us put our lives on hold to meet up, chat, drink, and have a pleasant evening. It had been nearly a year since the last social event, and we were wrapping up. Gone was the time of not worrying about responsibilities. My skin flushed warm from the drink when I decided to take a walk through the park to reach the subway. An iron fence with points circled the greenery. Inside, the city had gardens between different footpaths, lit with older-style street lamps, and the pond had lights by the edge to prevent drownings. The crickets and owls made noise, and the park served as a refuge for nature inside the city. Despite being cold, I figured a brisk walk would help me, and considering I had walked through the park countless times prior, it was almost second nature. My boots made sound on the cobblestones while I walked, hands in my jacket pockets and staring out at the night sky. You could almost forget you were in a busy city. Giving an occasional nod of hello to any people passing by, a rich aroma of earth and pollen greeted me, resulting in a sharp sneeze that turned into a sneezing fit. Covering my mouth, blinking, and suddenly a swirl of bright color surrounded me. Between 2 ancient trees, their branches twisting together, along with massive thick roots that had upturned the earth, leaving open, barren parts. Looking around, the pathway was gone. Turning around, trying to find a way when I realized the city itself had disappeared. The branches of the tree canopy were now the highest points. I heard the faintest whispering, only to realize they sang in a language I couldn't understand. Soft, gentle melodies. Soon I was drawn to the pond, no longer lined by artificial human influence. Dropping to my knees, and the thick grass cushioned my fall, a daze claimed me, and I stared into my distorted reflection in the pool. At first I believed it was from the water, but soon realized it was my sight that had changed. I felt faint, but happy? In the reflection, I saw a tall, cloaked figure step through the veil, between the 2 trees with intertwined branches. A strange mist surrounded him, but when I looked to see, there was nobody there. Perhaps I was dreaming? This couldn't be real. Looking back into the water, he was standing behind me, and could have easily reached out to touch me. Exhaling slowly, deciding now was the best time to make my escape, and standing up, I saw him, or rather, his scarred lips and chin. He blew a yellow powder into my face. Instantly I fell backward, feeling the figure's arms around me, holding me, and my limbs were immobile. I couldn't think. Whenever I tried to study his face, all I saw was the murky appearance of water, and I expected to pass out, to temporarily rest, but instead, my body was taken back through the tunnel, and my skin burned while we traveled. If it hurt who held me, they showed no sign. Soon we stopped. My stomach churned and I vomited on the floor. The contents of my stomach, coupled with a thin layer of shiny yellow liquid. With a final heave, pulling back my head to keep it clean while I knelt on dirty tiles. And once I was done, I reached out for a shovel nearby. I didn't know where I was. Holding it, standing up, and bringing it down on my captor's skull while he was distracted, only to have my body freeze in place, the shovel in the air. He drew back his hood, revealing his face. The closest thing I could think of was an orc from Lord of the Rings, grey with thick pits and a stitched scar down his forehead and his lips. One of his eyes were black and bloodshot, while the other was a warm shade of green. The pupil had two parts, the larger one on the bottom and another on top. Human, but not quite. The room we were in looked like an abandoned warehouse. The white tiled floors were stained with dried dirt, suggesting it had once flooded, with twisting vines running up the walls. With wide eyes, I watched while he leaned close, and a garbled growl came from his throat. Tapping it, lifting a bright purple flower with wide, curved petals, and opened his mouth, sprinkling the pollen onto his tongue, smacking his lips together, and he tried again.
Ah, the human awakens.
He drawled, slow and breathy. I wondered if his throat had been injured. I didn't know what to say. The vines wrapped around my ankles and wrists, pulling me in the direction of the metal gurney, and secured me to it with my arms by my sides. Turning his back to me, taking out test tubes and combining two different pollens together, it turned to ash inside the tube. Unsatisfied with the results, he threw it at the wall, resulting in it breaking, leaving a lingering amber stain down it.
Perhaps you wonder whether your god or gods have cursed you. Alas, it was simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
I struggled, opening my mouth, and only a low, whining sound came out. He opened my mouth and dropped a green oil onto my tongue. It tasted like sticky moss, and after I coughed, speech returned to me. What did you do to me? Who are you? I wanted to ask, what are you?
What was unnecessary?
He drawled. Now closer I could see his pointed ears. My captor forced my eyelids open and held it with his fingertips, holding a magnifying glass in front of his eye to inspect it, before moving to my right one. For a moment I swore he was going to talk to me. Instead, he pressed a lump on a flower. The closest thing I can describe it is a Venus flytrap. The mouth opened, revealing an open space with the rim lined with prongs that resembled fangs, and it seemed to be a recording device.
Number 103-02-839. In line for the experiment.
Experiment? No! Let me go! He gave me a long, disdainful stare and followed with,
Specimen is conscious, uneducated on the ways of the Fae, a common factor with those in the modern world. Taken from St. Albans Park at 12 a.m.
My head swam. St. Albans? That wasn't the name of the park.
Specimen is a biological female of Irish origin with distant Fae ancestry. Previous research suggests those with hidden interbreeding in their ancestry are best suited to the change.
He continued. A what ancestry? He exhaled, shoulders slumped in irritation. I figured I had one chance. Please, I don't know who set you up for this. I promise, I won't tell anyone. He took a jar, reaching in for another handful, and blew more pollen spores into my face. They burned. I could feel the tiny spores twist and turn inside my flesh. No matter how much I tried to speak, the sound did not come out. I tried screaming, flailing against the vines, and still no sound. Satisfied with my silence, he turned back to his notes. A scroll opened, held so and upright by an invisible force. The writing unrecognizable, scratches in all directions while glowing with an orange light, and moved with a flick of his wrist.
A note. I encountered one of her relatives back in the 15th century.
He trailed his finger over the air, and then moved to another.
And later, in 1958, who was a direct ancestor. I wonder what has changed.
He opened a flap of leather, taking out a sharp thorn, and pierced my wrist with it. He held the blood-coated thorn up in the air, placed it against his tongue, and smacked it on the top of his mouth, clearly assessing the taste. Finally he wrinkled his face, frowned and spat it on the floor, then wiped his tongue with his fingers, all to get the taste of my blood out.
Contains pieces of refined fossil fuels-based foods and diet, and it has trickled into the bloodstream, likely other areas. Not to mention other chemicals and preservatives. The curse of dealing with modern humans.
The words were written down with the same glowing text. He combined several different pollens and sap from different vines and plants together inside a bowl. A bitter, earthy smell blended together. The fumes caused my eyes to run, but seemed to have no effect on him. I hoped he would confess what he was about to do, like a foolish villain from a TV show where they would reveal their plans. His gaze was focused on his work, stirring and mixing it. While he was distracted, I twisted and turned my wrists, attempting to break the vines that moved when I did. They squeezed around me, only relaxing when I lay still. Accepting defeat, I allowed my limbs to fall limp, and that infernal grip loosened.
The balance must be restored.
He murmured under his breath, a mantra to keep him going. Finally satisfied with the mixture, the bowl was placed on the table closest to us. "Maybe if you tell me, I can help you," I offered, desperate. I doubted I could do anything. He moved my blouse out of the way, exposing my stomach to the cool air of the lab. Unbuttoning it, pulling it open, and it was clinical, with no hint of sexuality. Next, he picked up 2 plants, one that resembled vines, ivy, and the other was similar to a Venus flytrap, the mouth opening with sharp prongs, and he opened it, attaching it to my stomach. I expected to feel a pinch from the bite. Instead, I felt pressure and a slow burning sensation. A twisting nausea feeling gripped me. There was more pressure, and while it wasn't painful, it was certainly uncomfortable. He flicked the blue head, twisted and caused the stem near the base to pull it off. A transparent fluid leaked out at a gentle trickle. He waited for it to drain until he pierced the base, dunking the ivory in the mixture and holding it there. The ivy sparked to life, entering through the head and into my stomach. I squealed, my body tense in a foolish attempt to defend itself.
Relax. The process is necessary for your transformation.
He continued to feed the ivy inside my body. "Please, take it out. Take it out."
It won't take long.
He kept feeding it through. My skin bulged where the vines penetrated, creating line patterns and ridges. From what I could tell, they weren't going after my internal organs. Instead, moving around my body. And finally, the last piece entered. A curved leaf hung outside my belly button. The other vines securing my arms and legs released me. I dropped to the ground, a tingling feeling slowly returning to my hands, and I rubbed them to bring the feeling back. I didn't think I'd get another chance. Standing up, I ran heading to the entrance only to lose control of my limbs. The vines inside me held firm, ignoring my protesting muscles, and after painful stumbly steps, I was immediately brought back to him. forced to stand barely a meter away.
Good to see that it works. Your body is adapting quickly.
A methodical smirk on his lips. He clicked his fingers and my body sat on command. Take them out. Having them inside my body and keeping me under control made it worse.
Subject 103-02839 will need to be cleansed of all toxins and plastics.
A bulbous root was placed on my bare chest. The vines parted painfully in a circle to make room for it, creating ridge lines, causing my breast to become misshapen. Some went below the breast tissue, while others went on the skin itself. I thought the root would be all, but instead, 3 unopened flowers were placed on my kidneys and liver respectively. Once they hovered above the organ, it opened to reveal a dripping wet receptacle. The parts coated in pollen were placed on top, and soon they pierced my skin. The twisting, the pulling. It was an endless dance. It felt like it was being sucked through my skin, twisting and pulling. I felt everything yet couldn't flee. I screamed loudly, shaking my head, and I could feel it move out of my skin. After a period of time, he took them off, and despite the wounds, I felt better than I had in years. The receptacles were coated in a thick powder.
Subject has been cleansed of toxins and unnatural plastics.
He explained, talking to himself. The writing followed, lighting up the room.
Each year, it only gets worse.
He grumbled and didn't elaborate on what it was. Why would he explain himself to a lab rat? Throwing the discarded flowers into the fire, causing a burst of black smoke up in the air, followed by a pungent smell. Taking the root off my chest, turning it around to view the base and exhaling slowly. Next he checked my eyes, opening them wide and staring inside them. His dual-hued eyes stared at me, and finally withdrew his hand.
Phase 1 complete. Moving on to Phase 2.
He gestured, and the vines inside my body sprang to life, walking me to the gurney and lying flat on it. I didn't bother to try to fight this time. It didn't hurt when I went along with it, and I kept wondering how I'd managed to escape. I doubted doctors would be able to treat the vines inside my body, but anything had to be better than this.
One of 3 specimens who passed Phase 1.
The murmur under his breath didn't give me confidence of my own survival. He flicked his hand. The writing disappeared in a vibrant burst, and was replaced with images of 2 other people. One was a young woman, dressed in bright neon clothing I recognized from the 80s, with her big hair and large earrings, while the other was an Indian man wearing a turban, with a dhoti and veshti, and he must have been snatched on his wedding night. I could have sworn that was hundreds of years ago. Given the high number of which specimen I was, I had to wonder about the death toll of all those who hadn't survived the process. I wondered what about us had permitted us to survive, while so many others had died.
Something to do with their repressed genes. Strange. Others have not yet had their abilities activated.
He murmured, flicking his hand to reveal the double helix of each of us in vibrant hues, having it pulled apart with the chromosomes parting. Staring up at them, our fists clenched in growing frustration, and the answer was just out of reach.
One died through cardiac arrest, and the other's blood turned toxic. I'd need something to strengthen and protect the heart, but human hearts are weak.
The muttering flowed out of him, revealing where things had gone wrong.
The blood. It all needs to change.
I didn't like what this meant for me. He leaned back, deep in thought, and finally sprang into action. He took a bowl made out of a large, hollowed-out flower, adding in pollen from different plants, and sap from different trees, and vines. Next pouring water into it, then stirred and paused to remove his green eye, the one with the 2 pupils, placing it inside the liquid, stirring occasionally, and the empty socket gazed back at me. Taking the eye out, wiping it on his clothing, and placed it back in the eye socket, blinking with his eye wide, pouring more liquids inside, and stirred a final time, taking a vine, putting the end inside and leaving it in there. On my left arm, close to the elbow, he used his fingernail and pressed it deep, causing me to bleed, and allowing the red liquid to trickle down, while the other arm received a similar injury, only to have the vine inserted inside. Slowly it pulsed the strange liquid inside my body. My head swam. It was difficult to see and focus. I expected it to burn, to make me sick, but other than a light feeling of nausea, there was nothing. He watched me closely, checking my pulse, and I think he expected me to die. Finally, he must have decided to leave it to fate, leaving me to deal with the aftermath, staring up at the ceiling, the lingering helplessness clinging to me, and I waited. The blood, my blood, had finally run out, with a trickle of green liquid coming out instead. A heavy darkness came across my eyes. I could hear my heartbeat in my mind, and a tightness in my chest kept lingering.
Oh, you're still alive.
He marveled, utterly astounded by the revelation. He put pressure on the exit wound, stitching it up, and gently pulled the vine out. What's happening to me?
Most do not survive this long. You are one of 2.
The first time he addressed me, maybe he didn't think I'd survive. Why? My mouth was dry, the words choking me. He didn't look at me. Striding to the center, glancing up at the images of the other 2 survivors, and I noticed that time seemed steady here. The amount of light never changed, remaining neutrally at noon, and I wondered how. He placed several pieces of bark, sap, leaves, and parts of flowers on a table, hands resting on the surface while he stared down at it, the piece of the puzzle that had eluded him. Crushing a bulb, using half of the outline, stripping vines of their other layers, and connecting it all together, heating up the sap to cause it to stick to itself. Closing my eyes, wishing I could dream to escape, even temporarily, while I heard him working with the living and dead organic matter. Moments later, I glanced over to see a plant contraption shaped in a mutated outline of a human heart. My heartbeat had slowed down, ever since my blood had been changed. Hey? Picking it up, the scientist held it in the palm of his hand and held it up to the light, examining it closely, turning it to get a view at every angle.
To think this is an accumulation of a life's work.
A drained edge to his voice. His dual-colored eyes glanced in my direction and addressed me.
I hope for your sake this is a success.
He used a sharpened, hard vine to slice open my skin, slicing down my chest and peeling it open on either side to expose my ribs. I watched while my torso was skinned, leaving me with an exposed, bloody ribcage. A small, barbed club coupled with a stick was used to crack 6 of my ribs down the side of the sternum before he lifted it off, exposing my still beating heart. The scientist stared at it, turned his head and exhaled deeply, reaching out with trembling hands only to withdraw them. No one had survived this process. Slicing into the aorta, causing a burst of the liquid, my new blood to squirt him in the face, and there was no flinching. Then there was a secondary pinch from a bud of a predatory plant to stop the blood flow, and then it was cut away, and he forged on, with no emotion on his face. Gently my lungs were moved aside. Why didn't it hurt? Finally, still beating, my heart was removed and placed on a tray, watching it while the beating slowed to a drawl. I felt the heart contraption placed inside my chest cavity. It was sewn into place, and panic rose inside me when it didn't start to beat. He stared up at me, tapping the hard outline with his hand, and blew, bringing a burst of light from his fingers and the jolt granting the spark. I screamed loudly when flora and fauna melded. Plant and mammal were now one. The new heart beat rapidly, bulging out in all directions, and my teeth grit tightly together, in a foolhardy attempt to keep the pain at bay, only for the waves to continue.
So close. The specimen has lasted longer than the others.
He murmured in awe, wide-eyed admiration, focused on scribbling down the notes, frantically getting them down, and now the formula was proven to work.
Now, if only...
A whisper low. He observed my sternum with pieces of rib sticking out of it in his hand, and placed it beside my faded flesh heart.
If she is to survive, she'd need to breathe. Still, the ancestors must recognize her as human, and she must identify herself as one. I worry she won't make it through.
The ancestors? I couldn't imagine what beings would come before the Fae. Why do you need to do this? He paused, a reflective tone to his voice, looking up from his notes.
An oath. A broken alliance. The balance needs to be restored.
An oath? More silence. All these people died for an oath? He had the grace to look away in shame, while I glared daggers down at him. The truth of what he had done. I wondered if our lives concerned him. Or rather, they served as a reminder for his failure.
The rise of humans meant the fall of the Fae. Our magic was broken, a shell of its former self.
A note of bitterness in his tone, his body tense, and words spat through clenched teeth.
Our cities no longer functioned. Birth rates dropped dangerously low. Our medicine failed. We had no deaths prior to the rise, and our ancestors no longer spoke of us. The balance needs to be restored.
There was that phrase again. What balance? The moment of chattiness had passed. What do you want me to do? I snapped at him.
What you need to.
His tone was deadly. His right hand uncurled with a ball of vines twisted together in it, and he tightened his fist, causing the plant matter heart to ache. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of hearing me scream. My body tensed. My mouth filled with foul-tasting liquid that leaked from my nostrils, and I stopped breathing. Only when he released it, I could breathe once more. Tears came down my cheeks and I rasped, attempting to speak. He was standing close, face to face, our noses barely touching, jewel eyes threatening me, and now close, I could see his skin was blotched, with a heavy scarring on one side. It looked rough, the stitching roughly put together, with burst blood vessels, and a deep burn mark with thickened skin. One eye was cold, lifeless, while the other looked firmly in animosity.
I have lost all I have in my quest. If I have to destroy all humankind, I will do it to restore the balance.
I was doomed.
I think we understand each other now.
I wanted to tell him it wasn't my fault. Whatever his anger towards humans was not my cross to bear. The vines inside my skin loosened, allowing me to relax and take a moment to sit. I didn't feel thirst or hunger anymore. He opened the door, withdrawn through the movement of roots, and allowed the bright, intense sunlight to trickle inside, shielding my eyes, blinking while they adjusted, and stepping out into it. A feeling of warm nourishment filled me. Instinctively, my arms opened wide to accept the light. I knew I should have attempted to escape, that it could be my only chance. Instead, I opened my arms, parted my eyes, and stared into the sun without pain. It healed me, fed me, and helped me feel at peace. The scientist, my captor, stood by my side, with his face cowed and hidden from the sunlight. A sideward glance and a wrinkling of his top lip. He muttered a phrase I didn't recognize.
You will never understand the blessings that have been bestowed upon you.
He spat under his breath. Together we walked deeper inside the forest. The trees grew closer to each other, the roots thicker and the canopy hiding the light. Subconsciously, my pace slowed, yearning to return to the warmth of the UV rays, and was pulled away. A curl of his hand forced the vines to keep me moving, gently pressing with his hand, and we kept at a steady pace. The trees groaned and whispered to each other, deep and eternal. This was part of the world left unseen by humanity, deep inside the belly of the earth, and staring upright into the sky now with glimpses of the modern human world. Buildings, aircraft, and the endless waste of metal and plastic. Slowly, I saw them. Different heights and appearances. Some closely resembled the plants they originated from, while others were more human-like. Blinking, it was overwhelming, resting my hand on my forehead while the earth spun around me. An echoing rumble through the gathered crowd while I was led into the center. Fearful, until a sunbeam glared down while I closed my eyes and took in the warmth. What began as deep sounds morphed into whispering voices I could understand. Collapsing around me, steadily growing faster, with one voice standing out compared to the others, only to be replaced by another. They and the scientists were growing irate. The back and forth flowed violently, until my captor broke the silence.
She will be our sacrifice. Her human flesh will protect her from their magic. Do not doubt me a second time.
He lifted up the metallic device, holding it against my skin, yet even through the thick gloves, his skin sizzled, and the aroma of burning flesh filled the air, while all I felt on my skin was a soft, gentle chill. A broken, uneasy silence reigned briefly. I eyed them, the ones I was capable of viewing, and realized, slowly, an attempt was not out of the question. How long had the Fae and humans been rivals for the planet? A branch lowered, surrounding an arch with a root network, opening up in a haze of color my human eyes had never experienced. Together we stepped through a portal back to the earthly plane, only for the steady realization that the world had moved on. At least, 100 years had passed, and given the technological advancement of humans, it was no surprise. No drastic apocalypse. The park was still green, filled with trees with people walking through, with an exposed breast on one side. Pieces of metal attached to their foreheads, and their language was a mixture of the most prominent ones around the world. Or maybe the slang was too difficult for me to swallow. I stared in awe. The pair of us moved through them on the pathway, with him immune. Either he knew, or he was so driven about his goal. Opening my mouth, only for no words to choke out. My hands went to my throat, feeling large bulges under my skin, and a pair of twisting vines spilled from my mouth. Staring at him, choking, tears pricking at my eyes. Why did I feel betrayed when I should have known?
Goodbye, Emily.
Defeated. The first and last time I heard my name. Leaning back on one of the trees. Finally feeling at rest. And I knew it was my time. A man sitting on a park bench lowered his visor, stared at the scene dumbly, then raised his eyebrows, shrugged, and put it back on again, preferring tech to the natural world. I felt myself merging with the tree, able to see and understand while being part of the human world. Whatever his experiment had been for had failed. Years later, he glared at me, coldly, a living representation of his failure. He tried to crush the bulb in his hand, only to find it didn't work. Neither did a second attempt, and the third resulted in his hands being pierced with barbs from the bulb. Wincing, he removed the glove and stared in rage at the injury. It was thrown into the pond with a loud splash. The vines no longer followed his commands. Instead, they became part of my body and will. I was free of him. The portal reopened and he left, his whereabouts unknown to me. The modern world, coupled with the plant life, the buzzing of machinery, and the changes brought a new balance. The smog from before was gone. The clean air caused the stars to shine down brightly. The trees whispered seeing him. The great network, connected through the very bones of the earth. He found another, and the experiment had begun again. His quest was not yet at an end, and would continue until death claimed him, or the secret had been revealed. Time slowly faded. Suddenly the portal opened between the twin trees in a burst of color, and his familiar face stepped through. Cowed with only his dual eyes showing, there were more lines around them. Angry, bitter, determined, and I knew the lone humans would be in peril. I reached into my mind, seeking out the flesh, and spoke to them inside theirs. And you, human, are the next experiment. It is time for you to run. Hello, my little spooklings. Welcome to 2026 content. So I've decided to do custom outros again, and let me know what you'd like to see in them. I'd like to thank my amazing guest, Vidith22, for playing a character to perfection as always. Please check him out if you enjoyed his contribution. Have you stabbed the like button yet? Come on. Don't forget to leave a comment and tell me what you thought of the story, good, bad, or whatever. And subscribe if you haven't yet to become one of my little spooklings. Check out my socials. I post notifications on there whenever I go live so you can keep up to date if ever YouTube notifications ever decide not to work. I'd like to thank my amazing patrons and channel members for all their support. It is always greatly appreciated. Consider signing up to join their ranks and get some exclusive perks. Stay safe, my little spooklings. And remember, I'll be watching you.